Point blank, the quest for perfect hamstrings needs to include the leg curl. Yes, there are other ways that you can train your hamstrings overall, and we can spend plenty of time attacking them with exercises like deadlifts and kettlebell swings. But if you want truly strong, powerful hamstrings, then you need to include some sort of leg curl. Why? Because the leg curl has two main strengths compared to most other hamstring exercises. First off, it's training a different and critical function of your hamstrings, knee flexion. Your hamstrings are responsible for two actions. First off, they can help you extend the hip. This is critical for athleticism, and it is important to train this. But the second function may very well be more important for overall hamstring development. Your hamstrings are also going to flex the knee. And there are two main reasons to consider training your hamstrings this way. First off, working your hamstrings via knee flexion allows you to ensure that you're actually focusing on training your hamstrings. During that first function I mentioned, hip extension, it's actually a combination of glute and hamstring power that drives the motion, and your hamstrings can very often take the back seat depending on how you move and what your mind-muscle connection is. That can't happen when we're training our hamstrings via knee flexion. Your hamstrings have to drive that motion, period. The second major strength of the leg curl is that it challenges your full hamstring. You have 4 main hamstring tendons, and just 3 of those are actually involved in hip extension. The short head of your biceps femoris, though, kicks in during the leg curl. So if you truly want to build hamstrings, even if you're doing deadlifts and kettlebell swings, you'll still want to find some time to hit leg curls. So there are 2 types of leg curl machines that we can replicate, and they both train your hamstrings in slightly different ways. There's the seated leg curl variation, and this lets you train your hamstrings from a bit of a stretch position, since you're in hip flexion when seated. The lying leg curl, which may be the most common leg curl machine you see, lets you train your hamstrings with a bit less stretch and has you in a position closer to hip extension. Both leg curls, especially if you find good machines, can often get more challenge from your hamstrings as the muscle begins to flex, which is when it's at its strongest. So you'll feel a good pronounced squeeze as you aggressively contract your hamstring during either of those exercises.
So what do you do if you don't have access to a leg curl machine? Here are the 5 best alternatives.
Your lowest strength option that's really going to focus on knee flexion is something called the barbell leg curl. Here we're setting up a bench and a bar, aiming to get our torso parallel to the ground, almost as if we're prepping for an inverted row variation. But once we're set, we'll tighten our abs and glutes, and then flex at the knees as much as we can. This is a solid variation that gets us the knee flexion we want, with an underrated amount of load too. The only downside, and the reason it ranks so low on the list, you may find that your limiting factor is your grip instead of hamstring strength. A little higher on the list is the dumbbell leg curl. To do this, we'll simply lie on a bench with a single dumbbell held between our feet. We'll curl up as we do this, then slowly lower down. This move is fine in that it works us through knee flexion, but it actually doesn't quite challenge us like the leg curl does. It's actually most challenging when your legs are straight and your hamstrings are at their most stretched, but it decreases in terms of challenge as you curl up. Once your feet are directly above your knees, you won't feel much hamstring tension at all, so expect very little chance to squeeze at the top and really contract your hamstring. And the setup for this is not especially easy if you don't have a partner to hand you the dumbbell. Moving up the list, we get to our more superior options, and we can train the exact same movement as that dumbbell leg curl with the resistance band, performing a banded leg curl. Now we're starting to truly replicate both the motion and the force curve that we get with a true hamstring curl machine. You'll really have to earn the squeeze at the top of each rep too, because the banded leg curl is toughest in that most flexed position when the band is most stretched. Another similar move that trains our hamstrings a bit more at length since we're shifting into hip flexion is the seated banded leg curl. Once again, we'll anchor a band in front of us and curl. This is a simple way to start to challenge your hamstrings, and like the lying banded leg curl, it'll light you up in part because it's truly challenging you to flex and squeeze your hamstrings at the top of every rep. Still, there's an even better option of this move, and it's our best banded option for the leg curl. That is the lying single leg curl in a rack. For this one, we'll set up a band overhead and lie underneath it, then latch one foot within the band, leg pointed straight up. From there, all you do is curl. What's great about this is much like we could on a seated leg curl machine, we can ensure that we're really isolating our hamstrings and we're not sneaking in a little bit of hip extension force through our glutes because we can press our hands into our thighs. We'll get a lot more stability out of this and less opportunity to cheat on the hamstring curl. That's everything you want in the leg curl, and really with all of these options, no matter the situation, you can always find a way to get that old school leg curl burn.